Namaste. In this video, we will discuss about the Rig Vedic age, which is also known as the early Vedic age. The word Veda is derived from the root Ved, which means to know. The four Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sam Veda, and Athar Veda, are the oldest surviving texts which possess knowledge par excellence and gave their name to the era in which they were compiled. The Rig Veda, which is the oldest Vedic text, reflects one stage of social and cultural development, whereas the other three Vedas reflect another stage. The first stage is known as the Rig Vedic period or early Vedic period, and the later stage is known as the later Vedic period. The age of the early Vedic period corresponds with the date of the composition of the Rig Vedic hymns, that is 1500 BCE to 1000 BCE. The Rig Veda refers to Sapta Sindhu or the land of seven rivers. This includes the five rivers of Punjab, namely Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Byas, and Satluj, along with Indus and Saraswati. The political, social, economic, religious, and cultural life of the Rig Vedic people can be traced from the hymns of the Rig Veda. First of all, we will discuss the political organization of the early Vedic age. The early Vedic society was organized on the basis of the family. The head of the family was called the Grihapati. The gram consisted of several families. It was under a headman known as Gramini. Several villagers formed a Vish. It was placed under a Vishpati. He was a military leader. A group of Vish formed a Jana. Gopa was the head of one Jana. Several Janas formed a Janpad or kingdom. The Rajan or the king was the head of the Janpad. In the work of administration, the king was assisted by a number of functionaries like the Purohit, who was the priest, the Senani, who was the general of the army, the Gramini, who was the village headman, and the Spas, who was spy. Purohit was the most important officer of the state. There were two popular organizations which exercised control over the king: the Samiti or the General Assembly, and the Sabha, the Assembly of the Few. This shows that the kings during this age were not absolute despots but highly responsible to their subjects. There were several tribal kingdoms during the Rig Vedic period, such as Bharatas, Matsasyas, Yadus, and Purus. Kingship was hereditary. The king or the chief enjoyed a position of preeminence in the tribe. He was required to be Indra in valor, Mitra in kindness, and Varun in virtues. The military organization of the early Vedic age. In this era, the king did not maintain any regular or standing army, but during times of war, he mustered militaries. The military element was strong in the tribal system of the government. The army mainly consists of Patti, that was infantry, and Rathins, those were the chariot warriors. The weapons used by the soldiers were bows, arrows, swords, axes, and spears. These weapons were made up of metal. The soldiers were organized into units known as Sharda, Vrata, and Gana. Early Vedic age had a tribal polity in which the tribal chief led wars and was also a protector of the entire group. Instead of a standing army, the entire village participated in wars. We will also look into the social conditions of the early Vedic age. The family was patriarchal and was smallest political unit. The father was the head of the family and he was known as Grihapati. Women held an important position in the society. No religious ceremony, especially yajna, could be performed unless the wife joined the husband. Monogamy was generally practiced, that is, one man could marry only one woman at a time, while polygamy was prevalent among the royal and noble families. Polyandry and the custom of sati were unknown. There was no parda system, that is, the women did not cover their faces with veil. Women were given equal opportunities as men for their spiritual and intellectual development. There were women poets like Apala, Vishpara, Ghosha, Lokmudra, and Gargi during the Rigvedic era. A special ceremony called Swamvara was arranged for young girls to choose their own husbands. Widows' remarriage and the practice of levirate was present in the Rigvedic society. The garments these people usually wore consisted of three parts: an undergarment called nivi, a garment called vasa or paridhan, and a mantle known as adhivasa. Both men and women wore gold ornaments. The women used earrings, necklace, bangles, anklets, and many other ornaments. Food habits of the Rigvedic people consisted of wheat and barley, milk and its products like curd and ghee, vegetables and fruits were also the chief articles of food. Fish, birds, goats, rams, bulls, and horses were slaughtered for food at special occasions. Slaughter of the cow was prohibited since it was considered a sacred animal. People also drank intoxicating drinks known as sura. In the early Vedic age, there was no caste system. Instead, they were divided into classes. Members of the same family could pursue different occupations, arts, crafts, and trades and could change it at will. There was hardly any restriction in change of occupation. Education in Rigvedic era. There were gurukuls which imparted education to the disciples after their sacred thread ceremony. Entire instruction was given orally. The disciples were taught about ethics, art of warfare, art of metal, and concept of Brahma and philosophy, and basic sciences like agriculture, animal husbandry, and handicrafts. The economic condition of the people of Rigvedic era mainly revolved around the villages, as the people lived mainly in villages. And agriculture was one of the chief occupations, and special attention was given to cattle rearing. They plowed the land by means of a pair of oxen. The plowed land was known as Urvara or Kshetra. Besides the main crops of barley and wheat, cotton and oilseeds were also grown. Cows were worshipped and were symbols of wealth and prosperity. Sometimes cow was the medium of exchange. The wealth of the people was estimated in terms of their cattle. The cow seems to be their most valuable possession, and the wars were fought for the sake of the cows. Other animals like horse, ox, dog, goat, sheep, buffalo, and donkey were also domesticated. Weaving was an important occupation. Carpentry was also important profession, and the availability of wood from the forest cleared made the profession profitable. Carpenters produced chariots and plows. Workers in metal made a variety of articles. Spinning was another important occupation, and cotton and woolen fabrics were made. Goldsmiths were active in making ornaments. The potters made various kinds of vessels for domestic use. Trade was conducted through barter system. There were trade and maritime activities. Sometimes traders made a journey to distant lands for larger profits in trade. The cow was used as a unit of value. Gradually, the pieces of gold called nishk were used as a means of exchange. Trade and commerce were regulated and managed by a group of people called pani. Rivers served as an important means of transport. The chief means of transport by land were rathas and wagons drawn by horses and oxen. In spite of worshipping various deities, the Vedic age saw the prevalence of monotheism. They believed in the existence of one supreme power as the creator of the entire universe. There is no sign of the use of image worship in the Rigvedic times. The gods were worshipped by means of sacrifice and prayers. The Aryans were worshippers of nature. The forces of nature were invested with divine powers and worshipped as male or female gods. Indra was the god of rain, thunder, and strength. Agni was the god of fire. Surya or Savitri, a solar deity to whom the famous Gayatri mantra is dedicated, was highly revered. Varun was the god of wind. Yam was the god of death. Marut was the god of storm. Apart from these gods and goddesses, the cosmos was supposed to be peopled by innumerable celestial beings: Gandhars, Asurs, Vishwadevas, and many others. They did not build temples or idols to worship their gods, but worshipped them by chanting hymns in the open air in praise of them. Yajnas occupied very important place in the early Vedic period. It was performed by the Brahmins. Some special features of Vedic age are:
Sabha and the Samiti were the most popular ones, but there were many other organizations existing during this age, and those were Sabha, Samiti, Vidat, Gan, and Parishad. Sabha is like modern Rajya Sabha, Samiti is like modern Lok Sabha, and Vidat is the oldest, out of which Sabha and Samiti emerged. Gan has been mentioned in the battle fought to establish Vashisht as Purohit and remove Vishwamitra as Purohit. In Rig Veda, Sabha has been mentioned 8 times, Samiti is mentioned 9 times, Vidat is mentioned 122 times, and Gan is mentioned 46 times. Sabha and Samiti are mentioned as 2 daughters of Prajapati in Atharva Veda. In Atharva Veda, Sabha is called Narishtha, one which cannot be disobeyed, Anulanghaniya. The president of Samiti is known as Ishan. Sabha was a body of elite class, Uchchakulin, or people of prominence, Shresht. Male members of Sabha were known as Sabhe and female members were known as Sabhavati. Those who provided security to Sabha were known as Sabhachar. According to Ludwig, Sabha was the upper house in which priests, that is Purohit, and elite class, that is Kulin, used to participate. Sabha also used to work as a court. Samiti was like the lower house. Samiti used to elect the king. King used to carry out his work with the advice of Samiti. Samiti also used to do division of the booty earned by Lut and Loman. Vidat was the oldest body from which Sabha and Samiti emerged. Vidat used to take social and religious decisions and carry out spiritual discourses. It also used to do division of the crop. Let us take a quick recap. The most popular among these political organizations was Sabha and Samiti. Sabha was like the modern Rajya Sabha and Samiti was like the modern Lok Sabha, the General Assembly. And the oldest one among these was Vidat. Sabha has been mentioned 8 times in Rig Veda, Samiti has been mentioned 9 times in Rig Veda, and Vidat has been mentioned 122 times in Rig Veda. Sabha and Samiti are known as the 2 daughters of Prajapati in Atharva Veda. Sabha has been called Narishtha, which is Anulanghaniya, no one can disobey it, and president of Samiti was known as Ishan. Sabha was the upper house. It was joined by the elite class, the Uchchakulin, and the people of prominence, the Shresht. Samiti was the lower house. It used to elect and re-elect the king. The king used to work on the advice of Samiti, and the booty earned by Lut and Loman was also distributed or divided by the Samiti. Vidat used to take social and religious decisions and to carry out spiritual discourses, and it also used to do the division of the crop. Apart from Sabha, Samiti and Vidat, Sabha the Rajya Sabha like the Rajya Sabha, Samiti like the Lok Sabha, and Vidat the oldest one, there were 2 more political organizations, and they were Gan and Parishad. Gan has been mentioned 46 times in Rig Veda, whereas we did not find the number of Parishad being mentioned in the Rig Veda. Gan has specially been mentioned in the battle fought to establish Vashisht as Purohit and to remove Vishwamitra as Purohit. Gan you must have seen is very popular, like Jan Gan, Bhakt Gan, Vidvat Gan. Gan denotes a group, and we see the reference of Parishad in Rig Veda. The Varna system and the Ashrama system. The Vedic social system is structured by the underlying code of religion. This code is reflected through the basic principle of Varna Ashram Dharma. While the Varna deals with division of society, Ashram deals with the nature of training and living in 4 stages of life. Together, They profound a system referred to as Varna Ashram Vyavastha. The Varna system was very different from the caste system. Varna is the four divisions of society on the basis of profession adopted by them. They are Brahmins, the priests, Kshatriyas, the warriors, Vaishyas, people following various occupations, and Shudras, those who were serving the upper three classes. The Rig Veda clearly suggests that the members of the Rig Vedic family practiced different professions. The description of one family, which is given in the Rig Veda, shows that the head of the family was a potter, his wife was a corn grinder, and their son was a priest. From this data, it is inferred by the scholars that there did not exist the hereditary caste system in the life of the people of Rig Veda. During the Vedic period, the institution of Varna was a system of division of labor and was not hereditary like caste system. There were no restrictions as regards particular occupations for persons belonging to the particular Varna. Thus, the person born as Brahmin could take the occupation of a physician without thereby any way degrading social status. The Purush Suktam hymn of the 10th mandal of the Rig Veda, which happens to be the last hymn of the sacred work, mentions about the creation of the members of four classes in the Rig Veda. Brahmano asya mukham asid bahu rajanyah paritah. Urutal asya yad vaishya padbhyam sudro ajatya. The Brahman Varna represented the mouth of Purush, the universal man, the Rajan, his arms, the Vaishya, his thighs, the Shudra, his feet. In the post-Vedic period, the Varna division is described in the Dharma Shastra literature, the Mahabharata, and in the Puranas. During this time, caste percolates into Varna system, and Varna system acquired features of caste, interdining, and intermarriage between different castes were precluded. The division of labor becomes hereditary. The first three Varnas are described in the Dharma Shastras as twice born, and they are allowed to study the Vedas. Such restriction of who can study Vedas is not found in Vedic era literature. Ashram system. Ashram deals with the nature of training and living in four stages of life. The ashram are regarded as the resting places during one's journey on the way to final liberation, which is the ultimate aim of life. Life was divided into four stages known as ashrams. They were Brahmacharya, Grihasth, Vanprasth, and Sannyas. Brahmacharya ashram was up to 25 years. In this stage or ashram, the person of the ancient Indian society was expected to observe celibacy and devote his time to secure knowledge till he becomes 25 years of age. The child in the ancient Vedic society was under the care of his parents up to the time of his 5th year of life. The parents were expected to teach child elementary rules of proper behavior towards the elders. At the age of 5 years, the child's thread ceremony, that is Upnayan Sanskar, was to be performed, and after the performance of the thread ceremony, the child was sent to the Gurukul, where he used to stay with his guru, that is teacher, to acquire knowledge and skills. Next was Grihasth Ashram, that was from 25 years to 50 years. After the completion of his activity of securing knowledge in the Brahmacharya ashram, the member of the ancient Indian societies were required to marry, to earn money, to have children, look after their family, and perform all religious rites and ceremonies up to the age of 50 years. And after that, it was Vanprasth ashram. That was from 50 years to approximately 75 years. Vanprasth ashram was a stage of semi-retirement for the person who was 50 years of age till he attained the age of 75 years. The person in this stage resided in the forest and lived a simple life and was required to give knowledge to the young man of his society and pay attention to his own spiritual development. And the last was Sannyas Ashram. In this stage of life, one has to attain complete renunciation of worldly relations and attachments. In this last stage, the individual was free from all obligations, has to help himself in the search of true knowledge. An individual works on attaining final aim of all existence, that is moksha. Apart from Varna and Ashram system, one more deep-rooted theory was the theory of four Purusharthas. Purusharth is a Sanskrit word meaning the object of human pursuit or goals of human life. It is referred to the four proper goals or aims of human life. Purusharth comprises the concepts of dharma, arth, kam and moksha. Dharma is honest and upright conduct or righteous action. Arth means a righteous and honest pursuit of economic duties. Kam is fulfillment of sexual desires for progeny. Moksha is liberation, that is absorption of the self into eternal bliss. Depending upon one's deeds, that is karma, one is able to reach the objective of life, that is moksha, which means free from the fetters of life and death. Moksha or liberation means end of the cycle of birth and rebirth. The four goals or aims of life can be achieved in different stages or ashrams of life. During the brahmacharya ashram, one should have a pursuit for knowledge, and the purusharth that is attained is dharma. Dharma here is not religion, dharma here is duty. During the grahastha ashram, one has to work to earn wealth and has to marry for progeny. And the fulfillment of the aim that happens here is arth and kam. That is how four purusharthas are addressed in two stages of life. In brahmacharya it is dharma, and in grihastha ashram it is arth and kam. Then comes vanprastha ashram. Herein one has a pursuit for wisdom and imparts knowledge to the young generation and works towards the final aim of life, that is moksha. And in the fourth ashram, that is sannyas ashram, the individual works towards the spiritual upliftment and looks forward to attain moksha, that is freedom from the fetters of life and death. The difference between polygamy, also known as polygamy, polyandry and monogamy. Polygamy or polygamy is the practice of having more than one wife. In other words, this is a marriage in which two or more women share a husband. The term originates from the Greek poly meaning many and gyne meaning women. Here, a man can take more than one wife simultaneously or get married to one or more women when he is already married. A very famous example of it can be quoted from the very famous Indian epic Ramayana, where King Dashrath has three wives, Kaushalya, Kaikeyi and Sumitra. Although polygamy was a common practice in the ancient past, today it is not as commonly accepted as monogamy has become the norm. Next is polyandry. Polyandry is the practice of having more than one husband. In other words, this is a marriage where a woman can have more than one husband. The term originates from Greek polis meaning many and ander or andros meaning men. When the husbands in the polyandrous marriage are brothers, we call this marriage fraternal polyandry or adelphic polyandry. Generally, polyandry is a rare practice when compared to polygamy. Draupadi's marriage to the five Pandav princes is an early example of the polyandrous marriage in the great epic Mahabharata. Next is monogamy. Monogamy is the union between two individuals, that is, one man and one woman. It is the most common form of marriage. In the epic era, this example was set up by Rama, the king of Ayodhya, who, in spite of living in the age of polygamy, was having only one wife, that is Sita, throughout his life. If we discuss difference between polygamy, polyandry and monogamy in one chart, it would be polygamy or polygyny is the practice of having more than one wife. There is one husband and more than one wife. Polyandry is the practice of having more than one husband. There is one wife and more than one husband. And monogamy is the union between two individuals, that is, one man and one woman. There is one wife and only one husband. The position of women in Vedic age. In the first part, we will discuss the position of women in early Vedic or Rig Vedic age, and in the second part, we will discuss the position of women in later Vedic age, also known as Epic age. So, let us start with position of women in early Vedic or Rig Vedic age. Vedas are the earliest texts composed in Vedic Sanskrit. Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samveda and Atharvaveda are the four Vedas. Women held an important position in the society during the Vedic age. No religious ceremony, especially yajna, could be performed unless the wife joined the husband. She was the creator, protector and educator to her children. Monogamy was generally practiced, that is, one man could marry only one woman at a time, while polygamy was prevalent among the royal and noble families. Polyandry and the custom of sati was unknown. There was no parda system, that is, the women did not cover their faces with veil. Women were given equal opportunities as men for their spiritual and intellectual development. There were women poets like Apala, Vishwavara, Ghosha, Lokmutra and Gargi during the Rig Vedic period. In the Rig Vedic period, young girls had equal right to education. They were called Brahmavadinis, who were the products of educational discipline of Brahmacharya. Till their marriage, they were eligible to read Vedic theology and philosophy. Yajurveda says, "The scholarly woman purifies our life with her intellect. Through her actions, she purifies our actions. Through her knowledge and action, she promotes virtue and efficient management of society." Women enjoyed considerable liberty in the Vedic period. Women could even attend the popular assemblies. There was no child marriage and the practice of sati was absent. The marriageable age seems to have been 16 to 17 years. In the Vedic texts, there are references to women publicly attending feasts, dances, and other festive gatherings. Atharvaveda endorses that the women should be valiant, scholarly, prosperous, intelligent, and knowledgeable. They should take part in the legislative chambers and be the protectors of family and society. Education was considered as an important qualification for marriage. In Kshatriya society, girls had privilege to choose their husbands in Swayamvara. Monogamy was a recognition of the high social status of women, although polygamy was prevalent. Remarriage of widows were allowed under certain conditions. She could marry the brother of her deceased husband. This practice was known as niyog. No practice of divorce is found in that period. Unmarried girls had their share in their parents' property, but married daughters were exempted. Let us now discuss the position of women in later Vedic age, also known as Epic age. In regards to the position of women, their condition was not as good during the later Vedic or Epic age as it was in the early Vedic or Rig Vedic age. Daughters were regarded as a source of misery. Women could not go to the tribal council or assembly, neither could they take an inheritance. Married women of the upper classes had to suffer the presence of rival wives, and the custom of sati. Sati means a woman burning herself alive on the funeral pyre of her husband was also prevalent. The status of women declined, but the opportunity of education was not completely denied. However, they were deprived of the Upnayan Sanskar. In Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yajmalke and Gargi dialogue proves some women did get higher education. According to Shatpad Brahman, wife was not to eat out and was to eat only after the husband has finished eating. As per Brahman literature, if a man killed his wife, he would get the same punishment as for killing a Shudra. There is a mention of condition of women in various texts in later Vedic period. For example, Aitreya Brahman says, daughter is the source of misery, but son is a protector of family. Maitrayani Sanhita says there are three evils: liquor, dice, and women. In Brihadaranya ke Upanishad, we see a dialogue between Yajmalkya and Gargi that proves that women were highly educated. This completely suggests that the condition of women deteriorated in the Epic Age or later Vedic age in comparison with Rig Vedic or early Vedic age. In ancient India, the institution of marriage was regarded as of great importance. It was devised and maintained in order to solve the problem of the life of men and women in their worldly existence. For the members of society, many rites and ceremonies were laid down in order to make their life meaningful, sensible, happy, and progressive. Out of these rites, the rite of marriage was to fulfill the following main purposes: the promotion of religion by the performance of household sacrifices, progeny, whereby the father and his ancestors were assured of a happy afterlife, the fulfillment of the purusharth, that is Kam, the sexual pleasure. The Rig Veda mentions that the girls and boys of the Rig Vedic society had the freedom to choose their partner in life. When their choice was made and both parties consented to live a married life, their parents performed the regular marriage rites and got them married. 8 types of marriages were found in ancient India, which were named by them after the various gods and supernatural beings. First was the Brahma marriage, a marriage in which a girl with proper dowry was given to a man of the same caste and class by performing a marriage ceremony in which performance of various sacrifices was undertaken by the bride and bridegroom. The bride and bridegroom were also required to take 7 steps together around the sacrificial fire. The Brahma form of marriage was regarded as of higher respect in the Hindu society. The Dev form of marriage. It was a form of marriage in which the householder, that is the Yajman, who performed sacrifices to win the favors of God, gave his daughter to the sacrificial priest as part of his fees. The Arsh form of marriage. In this form of marriage, in place of dowry, there was a token bride price of a cow and a bull. The Prajapatya form of marriage. This was a form of marriage in which the father of the girl gave the girl in marriage to the bridegroom without any dowry and without demanding any bride price. The Gandhar form of marriage. The marriage of this form took place when the consent of the bride and bridegroom was there to get married, and they married secretly without taking permission of their parents as they liked each other. The Asur form of marriage. It was a form of marriage in which, by paying money for the bride with the consent of her father, the bridegroom married the girl by performing different sacrifices which were prescribed for the Brahma form of marriage. As in the Asur form of marriage, the consent of the girl was not taken, it was denounced and disfavored by the sacred texts prior to the 4th century BC in ancient India. The Rakshas form of marriage. In this form of marriage, the girl was forcibly carried away from her father's house by the bridegroom. It was a seizure of the girl, which was a sort of forcible kidnapping. And Peshach, in this form of marriage, the otherwise criminal conduct of a man was attempted to be legalized when he seduced a girl when she was asleep, or when she was drunk, or when she was mentally deranged. The ancient Indian thinkers prescribed even death penalty for such a criminal seduction of the girl if the person committing that crime refused to marry her. The first 4 forms of marriage, the Brahm, the Dev, the Arsh, and the Prajapatya, were generally approved and were permissible in the ancient Indian society. Let us have a quick recap of the 8 forms of marriages prevalent in ancient India. First is the Brahm, in which the marriage in the same class with proper dowry. Second is Dev, where the daughter is given by the householder to the sacrificial priest as a part of his fees. Third is Arsh, where the bridegroom presents a cow and a bull to the parents of the girl in form of this marriage.
Next is Prajapati, where a girl is married without dowry. Fifth one is Gandharv, where the bride and the bridegroom get married secretly without taking permission of their parents. Sixth is Asur, marriage of availing men and women often clandestine. Rakshas is marriage by capturing a girl, and Peshach is marriage by abducting the girl when she is asleep or drunk or mentally perturbed and not in her full senses. If you want to know about any other topic in history, please leave it in the comment box so that I can come back with it. If you have liked this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.